Hello everybody. The survivors in Don't Starve Together really have a lot to talk about, don't they? Every survivor has a myriad of quotes for literally everyone and everything in the entire game. Thousands upon thousands of lines for things ranging from tables to eldritch abominations. But when you have a game as big as Don't Starve Together, not everything usually ends up making the cut in the final game. In today's video, we're going to be talking about some unused and unseen quotes found in the files of Don't Starve Together. Quotes for things never actually seen through traditional gameplay, quotes that were changed over time, and even quotes for objects and events that, canonically, never even happened for the survivor that said them. Let's dive on in. But before we dive on in, I just want to quickly let you guys know that on the 9th of April, tomorrow if you're watching this on the date of upload, Clay will be announcing a brand new Don't Starve game over at the III Interactive Indie Showcase livestream. Yeah, this was revealed a few days ago as a secret step in the ARG and a teaser website. I am very excited and will very likely cover it more when the news breaks, so make sure to check out the stream when that happens. Back to the video. First up, we're going to talk about those things that never happened, in the form of the old events hosted many years ago. The Forge and the Gorge. Now I made it sound like these events never actually happened, but they did. However, only for the survivors that existed in the game during that event's lifespan. Because those events are so old, they took place before any of the new survivors, except for Winona, were added to the game. Meaning characters like Walter, Wirt, Wartox and Wonder never took part in the Gorge/Forge/Splorge. Despite this though, they still have a lot of interactions and quotes for a lot of the objects and entities found in those events. Due to the sheer amount of things added in the Gorge and Forge, it would take me forever to go over every single one of these quotes. Because yes, as far as I can see poking around in the game's speech files, most new survivors have quotes for the things found in the events that they would never have taken part in. Most survivors, but not all, sadly. It seems that Walter and Wanda, due to them being the latter two survivors added to the game, all reuse Wilson's quotes for all Forge/Gorge related stuff. However, that still means Wartox, Wirt and Wormwood have near full quotes for everything found in those little events, despite not being there. Wiley is kind of in the middle since he does have only a few quotes for the Forge, but absolutely none for the Gorge, which is very interesting considering that event would kind of be his, thing. We have such quotes like Wartox telling Battlemaster Pugner that he's here for no reason other than to have fun, which adds up to pretty much Wartox's entire reason for existing in Don't Starve Together to begin with. We have Wormwood referring to the Gnaw, quite cutely, as simply the Sky Belly. We got Wiley, as is tradition, yearning for a way to get home via the portal found in the Forge. And of course, we have Wirt, who has no idea who or what any of the goat people found in the Gorge actually are. Either Wirt forgot that she possibly used to be a goat child, or she never was. She also is, interestingly enough, significantly less hostile towards the swamp pigs found over here compared to the pigmen found in the regular forest. I guess due to their nature of living in the swamp, Wirt is way more inclined to be nice to them, huh? I do wonder how Wirt feels about the pigmen living in hamlets, since they're also from a different caste to the one in the forest. There's a lot of unused quotes here, way more than I could go over in this video, so make sure to check the files yourself, or more easily, check the wiki if you want to know more. But don't expect any huge lore revelations in there, however. You'll just find some typical quotes that you would expect from your favourite characters. Actually, right after I said that, I find these quotes right here, which do in fact have some pretty big lore significance about how Merms still tell the story of the Gnaw over in the regular forest. As well as Wormwood's comment on bro love. But it's really interesting to see that Clay went to the effort of making quotes for these survivors, even though they wouldn't actually end up in these events. It's very possible that these survivors were in development way before the Gorge and the Forge were finalised, or simply that Clay didn't know if they would ever bring back those events, so gave them quotes for the survivors anyway, just in case. That would also explain why the latter two survivors, Wanda and Walter, don't have any quotes for those events, since by that point, Clay possibly knew they weren't going to bring back those events. A real shame, but interesting to think about nonetheless. Alas, this does not confirm that the Forge and Gorge would ever be coming back. But man can I dream. But let's take a break from inaccessible quotes now for some changed quotes. Now, a lot of characters got quotes for Together to reflect upon their new status as being in a world with other survivors. Most of these are reflected in new things, but some old entities and items got brand new quotes to showcase this. The best example, and my absolute favourite example, is for the Maxwell statue. In single player, characters would have more negative remarks to the statue, talking about how it's the man that brought them here, how evil it feels, and so on. But in Don't Starve Together, every survivor got a brand new quote for the statue. Wilson will funnily reference how Maxwell is now much shorter as a survivor than he was in Don't Starve Together as an NPC. Willow will playfully call him a big stone nerd. Wolfgang says it looks like his new friend, and Wickerbottom even says he's a sweet boy once you get to know him. Wigfrid says the villain turns hero, and even Weber is starting to forgive Maxwell. Only a little bit though. It's character development like this which I utterly adore in Don't Starve Together. Sure, he may have trapped several men, women, children, and a robot in this horrible dimension where they die over and over again, but somehow all of those that he trapped here are forgiving of him all of these possible years later. I don't know if that's admirable or silly, but I really love it. Of course, I can't mention Maxwell's statue without Maxwell's quote for it himself. In single player, he remarks how it's a fine statue. But in Don't Starve Together, he says that it seems so silly now. You poor, poor old man. Love these quotes so much. Speaking of the time Maxwell was in charge, let's look at some quotes for things exclusively found in single player. The best example is the old bell. That big funny bell that you can ring that summons the giant foot to crush everything in an area. This item was rightfully removed when Together was made, but despite that, still has quotes for the survivors that could never use it. My personal favourite of which is that Walter suggests that Wobie attaches the bell to her collar, which just instills this absolutely amazing visual in my mind of Wobie just running through the base and absolutely getting it pulverised by Bigfoot. If anyone wants a drawing prompt, there you go. Other single player only stuff, of course, includes the adventure mode items. From Maxwell's door to the divining rod in its holder to even his stupid little tooth traps, every Don't Starve Together exclusive survivor has quotes for the stuff, despite them never existing in Don't Starve Together to begin with. Well, to a degree at least, since a lot of the adventure mode exclusive items do still exist in the files, and some can even be spawned in-game. But the entire aspect of adventure mode never has, and most likely never will, exist in Don't Starve Together. I mention this a lot in my Things Removed video, by the way. I think these quotes existing don't imply the fact that adventure mode would ever make a comeback to Don't Starve Together, no matter how cool that may sound. I simply think it's due to how the quotes are laid out, that they just fill them in since they're interlaced with all of the other quotes in their list, for example. Most of the time they are also commented to be a single player quote as well. But it's still very fun and cool to see that Clay did indeed come up with these quotes for the hypothetical. This does also mean there are quotes for Don't Starve Together survivors for the Nightmare Throne itself, and even the Nightmare Throne if Maxwell is sat on it, including a favourite quote of mine where Walter just tries to sick Wobie on him right away, which creates yet another amazing visual. This does make me wonder though that maybe these quotes aren't unimplemented, and eventually we might even see the Nightmare Throne again in Don't Starve Together, only this time someone else might be sat upon it. Again though, much like the quotes for the Gorge and Forge stuff, there's a lot to go over here, and most of the quotes are pretty mundane in nature. but still cool to see nonetheless. But how about we look at things that were cut from the game? Like everybody's favourite, and something I don't know if I've talked about on this channel yet, human meat. Yeah, originally Don't Starve Together was going to go down a much more macabre route and have actual cannibalism in it. They nixed the idea pretty quickly in development, but quotes do remain for these dubious items, but only for very few survivors, as a lot of characters will just call back to Wilson's quotes. Don't expect Walter to be saying things like this. All of the quotes that remain are, as you'd expect however, voicing their discomfort and unease around the concept of eating human flesh, and rightfully so. Except for Wormwood, who is perfectly okay with eating human meat. Jesus Christ, man. I guess I can't act too shocked since, Wormwood's not a human, and therefore it's not cannibalism because he's not eating his own species, but he's so blasé and chill with it and even looks like he enjoys the taste that it's almost jarring. The evil Wormwood theory is more confirmed now than ever. There's not as many quotes for cut items and unimplemented ones as you'd hope, however, since, a lot of them never existed long enough to even get quotes. But you can find the odd one here and there, like with human meat. Another notable example though, Maxwell's mosquito traps. Now we know the survivors did have quotes for Maxwell's tooth traps, which do exist in single player but not in Don't Starve Together, but the mosquito traps, whilst existing in the game's files, never naturally spawned, not in Don't Starve Together or even adventure mode. Nonetheless, every survivor has a quote for the thing, ranging from Walter's desire to somehow get the mosquitoes out of it, to Maxwell's regret to even inventing the darn thing to begin with. Even Wheeler has quotes for it too. Gosh, how I want more Wheeler in Don't Starve, please Clay. But once again, let's look at some quotes themselves that were removed instead of the items they were tied to. For example, Wirt has removed quotes for the lantern, mentioning that scaleless folk can't see in the dark, and even had old Barks herself about being able to see in the dark when she was first implemented. This was most likely changed, as it originally made it sound like Wirt could possibly be immune to Charlie, like the other Merms are. However, if you ever played as Wirt, you would notice very quickly that she cannot see in the dark at all, and would still be killed by Charlie like any other survivor would. Her having quotes about seeing in the dark when you, the player, couldn't, most likely would cause a lot of confusion and contradictions, so it being removed made a lot of sense. In the same vein as that, she used to say she didn't need to use umbrellas. While she does have reduced penalties of being wet and even perks to buff her while she is soaked, she can still perish due to wetness if you're not careful, and ergo would still kinda benefit from umbrellas in certain shapes or form, especially when it comes to acid rain. Some quotes were also slightly altered over time too, instead of being outrightly removed. Pretty much every survivor has gotten these in some shape or form to fix grammatical errors, but the best example for this are with Warley, whose quotes got touched up a lot when he was reworked for Don't Starve Together. Usually with the aforementioned grammar and changes to match his mannerisms of speaking, such as a few "I'ms" being replaced with his more commonly said "I ams", but I'm going to be brutally honest with you here. The only reason I'm bringing this up is because Warley used to call hambats meat popsicles, and I think that's bloody hilarious. The newer name, Ham Popsicle, is slightly better and a little bit less dirty sounding in this regard. Good job, Clay. Another great example is Willow's quote for watermelons. Way back before a certain survivor was added, she would remark how she knew a watermelon called Walter once, and that he was a jerk. Come the introduction of the real Walter, Willow just now talks about fire melons instead. This was probably changed because A, turns out Willow didn't know Walter, or B, Willow was just being rude and calling Walter a jerk and a watermelon for no reason. But yeah, this was just changed because it would be confusing and strange otherwise, since we all know characters in any media cannot share names with each other. But yeah, Clay developer Joe W did clarify on the forums at some point that Willow did not know Walter the survivor before they ended up meeting in game. However, I bet you didn't know survivors weren't the only victims of having their quotes changed or removed. NPCs also got the axe too, such as pigmen. They used to have some quotes that would break their method of speech by not being in all caps, including quotes for whenever they eat a hatching tallbird egg. Does anybody remember that? But also their quote for eating food used to only remark it as meat. This was changed to the more generic food since the pigmen are omnivorous in the final game, and having them get excited for meat when they're eating berries was a little bit strange. But of course, I can't mention pigmen quotes without going over the infamous quote that was removed. They would randomly call the survivors, when approaching them, an ugly monkey man. Yeah, I really don't need to tell you why this one was removed, do I? Let's quickly move on from this topic. Quick, I need to lighten the mood after that one. Pearl also has unused quotes too. Most notably, she has quotes for panicking whilst being on fire, and quotes for being in combat. These remain unused in the final game simply because Pearl cannot catch fire, and Pearl will never throw hands to defend herself. I do wonder if such an event could happen, that these quotes would play automatically. In fact, now saying that, I do kinda wish they made it so Pearl would fight to defend herself against like hound attacks or something after you relocated her off her island. She's absolutely got that babushka strength is all I'm saying, right? She could easily take care of a hound wave or two. Overall, it's just really fun exploring the worlds of what ifs and what once was. When you have a game filled with such rich characters that a lot of us covet so dearly, it's nice to hear parts of them that never really were designed to see the light of day, even if a lot of the quotes we didn't see ended up being pretty generic and predictable in a way. Still though, learning something new about something you think you fully understood is always a treat. So I really hope you enjoyed this video and, possibly I inspired you to check these missing quotes out yourself. But who knows what other quotes there are out there that never made it into the final game and only exist within Clay's offices, that will never even have a cameo as a comment in the code. Maybe the Gorge and Forge will come back for real, and maybe, just maybe, so will Adventure Mode. Nah, don't get your hopes up. Anything is possible though, just like this video ending. Thank you all so much for watching. Let me know what your favourite unused, unimplemented and changed quote is down in the comments below. I'd love to hear them. Maybe I could make a part 2 if we find enough of them. For now though, take care everybody. Have a lovely day or night. Bye bye.